No matter the mission, Global Express delivers a highly reliable, end-to-end Ka-band commercial system built from the ground up with U.S. government users in mind. Adhering to the highest security standards and backed by a dedicated cybersecurity team, Global Express is the first global wideband commercial and military Ka satellite network from a single trusted provider, readily available to support worldwide U.S. government operations from CONUS to Europe, the Middle East to Africa and Asia, as well as the Atlantic Ocean region and the Pacific. Purposely designed for mobility, Global Express provides continuous service as traffic is handed seamlessly across each spot beam. When demand surges, high-capacity military steerable beams are capable of supporting significantly higher data rates and can complement military wideband systems. We've invested $1.6 billion to develop a system that is interoperable with military satellite systems to ensure there is no such thing as mission impossible. Global Express complements the wideband global SATCOM network, offers flexible connectivity available on demand, cost-effective augmentation, and high-throughput bandwidth in support of emergency responders, backhaul, forward-deployed troops or intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions. Global Express, delivering communications that go further and faster, reliably for U.S. defense, intelligence, homeland security, and civilian organizations. One high-speed network, one trusted provider, one seamless global solution. Global Express, enabling mission success.
Richard Kusiolek, managing editor of GMCstream Incorporated, welcomes Inmarsat's key executives at Satellite 2017 DC, March 2017, and interviews Rebecca Cohen-Hirsch, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Policy at Inmarsat, who provides key insights into the SATCOM requirements of the U.S. government.
Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came about, briefly, where you are now?
Certainly, Richard. Thank you very much for inviting me for this conversation. I'm delighted to be here. So I've been with Inmarsat now for just about 8.5 years. And prior to that time, I spent a little over 20 years, amazing how fast time flies, but a little over 20 years inside the Department of Defense. And while there, I started first as an electrical engineer, systems avionics design engineer, and then went from there into an experimental flight testing engineer role, which was very exciting. Flew any number of different aircraft platforms and enjoyed that. And then progressed through and was able to work in the spectrum management arena and was promoted ultimately into executive service by the Deputy Secretary of Defense, then John Hamre, who brought me up to create a new organization, the Defense Spectrum Office. And then I moved on from there and went back into my acquisition roots and came over to DISA, the Defense Information Systems Agency, where I was able to set up an organization there and then evolved to actually running the commercial SATCOM business for the Department of Defense at that time before I left. So it's been a very diverse but interesting career, all focused on supporting the nation's security and the warfighters and their mission.
Well, that's a really good introduction. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I'm actually very awed by it because, especially with the fact that you were also flying platforms, that's got to be unbelievable.
It was good fun. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, did you receive any repercussions from your U.S. government business as a result of the Inmarsat switching to the Arianespace for launch after the SpaceX delay on December the 8th, 2016?
When we look at our access to space, of course, affordability is essential for us to evaluate, as well as ensuring that we can meet our timelines. So when we looked at different options, as we're focused on timely access to completion of our constellation, adding new capabilities, we'll make a choice based on our business requirements. And so that was a logical decision for us to make. It made good business sense, and there were no repercussions simply because it was both a business deal and, of course, a timeliness opportunity for us. One of the most significant challenges for any space operator is that access to space, and the launch industry is very competitive and very strong in many ways, and yet, from an operator standpoint, we want to ensure that we have a safe ride to space and use the best operator at the time that can get us there in a timely fashion.
Great. Of course, excellent insight for our subscribers as well. You recently, Rebecca, recently announced that satellite communications specialist Inmarsat and Satlink Satellite Communications are teaming up to provide communication services for vessels at sea. And I was kind of wondering if that also includes the U.S. Navy.
So we actually have, through one of our retail partners, Inmarsat Government, recently were awarded the next generation of commercial SATCOM services for the Navy. So we will take not only the capabilities that they're enjoying today, but also provide them with the latest partnerships and technologies to meet their operational requirements. This could be one solution. If that meets the Navy's requirements, we'll explore that with our customers and make sure that we can exceed their expectations.
I kind of wanted to address the needs of the warfighters, and I think you emphasized them, and that's kind of my space, if you will. Army, Marines, or even any of the Navy SEALs or Special Ops that carry a lot of equipment to deal with the various waveforms. And I won't talk about them, but how are you addressing these realities today in an era of ISIS, which is a reality, and regional wars in the Middle East and Eastern Ukraine?
One of the great advantages of Inmarsat is we are a global satellite communication provider. So our capacity and our capabilities are anytime, any place, anywhere. And certainly with events that are happening in the Middle East or disaster response in the Ring of Fire, other areas anywhere in the world, Inmarsat services are available. So our warfighters that are enjoying those services in response to activities in the Middle East, they have highly dynamic and capable systems that they deploy with. Our services are reliable and trusted and available for them in that region, as well as anywhere else that they might deploy. It's one of the differentiators that Inmarsat offers because of our focus on mobility and the way we deploy our systems so that we have consistent coverage and predictable capabilities anywhere on the globe.
Okay, excellent. Another question I have is Inmarsat contributing to the U.S. Army's needs for field radio connectivity? I think that was one of your sweet spots, correct? Inmarsat.
Well, any type of disconnected communications for mobile users, and so the Army, of course, is one of our key customers, and we've developed a new capability, or reasonably new capability, that actually enhances the Army and then any dismounted soldiers' communication capability when they don't have access to UHF SATCOM or tactical SATCOM. It's a capability, we call it LTAC, which is Tactical Satellite Communications via L-band. And with a small applique, about the size of a soda can, the Army or any other user can actually use their existing antenna, their existing waveforms, their own crypto gear, and rather than leverage the congested or unavailable UHF SATCOM, using the applique, you can use the backhaul of L-band via Inmarsat using LTAC. So it's an affordable and a viable augmentation to their existing capability that gives them further reach and greater capacity.
I think that's a real strong point, I think, that you just made. And I think in light of realities of defense budgets and also in focusing on the military as we see coming up in 2017. So it's a really good point you made. I appreciate it. After all the commercial and military defense intrusions, we are now that cybersecurity is really paramount in defending our national security. What is the level of encryption being provided for the Navy's broadband needs?
So the Navy, of course, encrypts their own data, as any of our users do, and all of our military in particular, but our commercial customers also go to long lengths to protect the efficacy of their data. The way we support them as a network provider, of course, is to maintain the security of our own network and to ensure that it's trusted. We use, for our own commanding of our constellation, NSA Type 1 encryption to ensure that we're the only entity that can command and control our satellites, that you can rely on them being controlled by a trusted, known operator. So then, of course, when the users encrypt their own data, it adds additional defense in depth. So it provides layers of protection and assurity, mission assurance to ensure that the data gets through from point A to point B.
Sure. Okay, excellent. Well, again, thank you for giving some clarification on that as well. I thought it was well done. And you know, his partnering with the Department of Defense in the last several years, considering 3 years of budget, programs, budget cuts have been very difficult. What does the future look like now that the budgets has kind of gotten away from some of the programs have been now removed, which kind of will actually operate a little bit more fluid, I think, in a budget sense for the Department of Defense.
We're very hopeful to see the words that are coming out of the new administration in terms of emphasis in national security and a desire to address the budgetary challenges that our customers have experienced. We have been able to operate within those budgetary restrictions to ensure that the warfighter requirements are indeed met. It's fiscally constrained, but the operational requirements are still there. The challenge, of course, with commercial SATCOM is the vast majority remains outside of the appropriated budget and is funded through contingency funds. So looking forward, as this administration and the leadership within the Department of Defense and our customers are intentionally developing an integrated architecture, having funds specifically allocated for commercial SATCOM as that critical communication capability is something that we're looking towards and helping shape in the future. We recognize that cost is an important factor, and so we ensure that our services are relevant and affordable, even whether you've got a flush budget or a constricted budget. We're still very price sensitive.
Thank you. Getting down to only 2 more questions, and then you can relax, I hope. I already know you're relaxed. What would you like to see improved with the 2017 commercial satellite working relationships with the Department of Defense and government? I think based on your background, I think the industry should really appreciate, your experience and also how you could bridge the gap, between the administration, I think, and the Department of Defense. No doubt about it.
What we're really looking forward to in 2017 is furtherance of the relationship. We've seen significant movements in the leadership in place, particularly the uniformed leadership, with General Hyten at Strategic Command, General Raymond at Air Force Space Command, really emphasizing their space enterprise vision and the dependency on commercial SATCOM. Then reiterated by the Pentagon, the leadership therein, also emphasizing how important it is to engage with the commercial industry. In 2017, we're looking forward to actually having a meaningful exchange of information where it's a relationship of reciprocity, where we're contributing to the studies that will determine the architecture of the future, and we're getting feedback on some of the challenges that the government is experiencing to see where we can fit in and how we can do that meaningfully. So it's very exciting to see that go forward. We are hoping to get beyond just the discussion and get into those exchanges of information and then the programs ultimately that will that will follow as a result. The commercial industry and Inmarsat in particular provides very compatible, interoperable, and relevant services to be able to augment military SATCOM today. And we are continuing to invest in our network, our security, our position, our capabilities, and our capacity with the government in mind so that we can continue to be that strong partner. When that comes in the shape of an integrated architecture and it's planned and strategically deployed with a strong partnership with industry, then not only does industry remain in its vibrant position, can continue to invest and compete, which is important for price control, but becomes more intentional and integrated into the architecture, and the warfighter wins as a result.
Well, the last question, of course, is kind of on your side, and I'm just kind of wondering if you have any final comments. You've given us so much, I think, exciting news angles, if you will, and also a reality of stability, I think, in both the Department of Defense and our government, and where Inmarsat is contributing, to that relationship. So.
There are opportunities to make some very significant changes going forward, and one area is really a different business model. There's kind of a historical approach to using SATCOM, and that tends to be looking at leasing of megahertz, basically access to spectrum. And while that's certainly relevant for broadcast and will have a place in aspects of the future architecture supporting the government as well as other commercial customers, looking at SATCOM as a service where the complexity of the management of the network, the investment of the infrastructure, the loading, the distribution, the terminals, and all of those factors are actually borne by the industry and conveyed as a capability or service into the government. This is not dislike at all what's done in the telecommunications industry. So rather than actually, for instance, buying a piece or a portion of fiber in a different network, or perhaps a tower in a cellular network, you really, as a consumer, we buy a service. We know that we're going to be able to have so many megabits per month, we're going to have a certain rate that we're going to pay. It's very predictable, it's very scalable, it works very well for not only budgeting, but also has the ability to expand as our demands dictate. Applications change, needs and locations change. The same applies for SATCOM, with the satellite being another node on that network. Rather than buying a piece of the spectrum, you actually would benefit from the service and what we actually deploy on a global basis, and be able to scale, have an on-demand service, benefit from the investments as well as the capability up and technology refresh that we provide. So it's another cloud service. It has the elegance of a space component, but it's really SATCOM as a service. That's very different. That's a challenge and a different mindset. It's a different business relationship, and yet the opportunities are significant. Improvement in affordability, scalability, and of course just the wealth of interoperability and augmentation to legacy services or legacy systems that exist in the military infrastructure today.
Well, this has really been a great interview. So much information you gave us. I want to thank you very much on behalf of GMCstream TV. So thank you for your time.
Richard, thank you
It's
very
well
much for
appreciated.
having me. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.